This is going to be my fourth and final preview for the Ravens-Lions Week 7 matchup in Baltimore. A super collision between two extremely tough and well-rounded teams that I happen to cover and do a lot of film of, obviously. Let me know what you guys think of the graphics as the video premieres here and we get into the intro and then the film. I don't get to publicly thank my friend who creates these for me. He chooses to wish to remain anonymous, so I like to pass on positive comments to him as best I can to encourage him and just thank him. So we're going to talk about the Ravens offense versus the Lions defense. Obviously, the matchup that we've cast in an old Western light for you is TODD MONKEN versus Aaron Glenn in terms of the coordinators. We use the young theme, the Jedi Star Wars theme, for Ben Johnson versus Mike McDonald. So let me know what you think of those two comparisons. But look, this Ravens offense under TODD MONKEN has not established a week-to-week rhythm where the identity is clear from week to week, possession to possession, and sometimes even play to play. The first 6 weeks have been very staccato or disconnected at times. We did put out an extended preview already, like I alluded to, of focusing on Ben Johnson and Mike McDonald as the two young, extremely prepared coordinators in charge of highly ranked groups. And the Lions on that side of the ball, offensively for a moment, they're third in yards per game, fourth in points per game at 28. 380, 382 yards per game. The Ravens defense is second in the least number of yards allowed per game, only 260. So you've got this real interesting dichotomy or clash between, something's got to give, I guess. Maybe one team wins a couple of possessions and one side wins the other. This matchup, the Ravens offense versus the Lions defense, is somewhat more difficult to summarize and certainly to project. You have to talk a lot about Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Aidan, Hutchinson, Brian Branch, among others, and I will, and all the supremely young talent that's going to be out there on the field. But I'm going to start with the older, long-term coaches in Aaron Glenn and TODD MONKEN. Now, when I say long-term, Aaron Glenn's only been with the Lions for 3 years. Of course, he was a fantastic player. He's a 3-time Pro Bowler, I think an All-Pro one year, like 2021 or 2022. With the Texans. He starred for the Jets early in his career and then moved on to the Texans, had his jersey retired down in Houston. Former first-round pick, retired from playing, I think, 2009, 2008, and he eventually started coaching. Ended up with the Saints for 5 years, so that's the connection there with the Lions staff. Became the defensive coordinator in Detroit in 2021, and his first season was clearly a difficult one. The Lions went 3-13-1. And even 2022 didn't start out great necessarily for the Lions defense, clearly. But we all know how it finished. It ended up with an 8-2 finish that very easily could have been a playoff run if it weren't for a late season loss to the Panthers down in Carolina that they've since avenged in intense fashion a couple of weeks ago at home. What some people may not be aware of is in the middle of that 8-2 run to finish last year, Aaron Glenn's defense experienced a drastic turnaround, in my opinion. Again, they went 8-2, and you look at the culminating stats for the entire year. I don't think they always tell the story for a player, for a team, or for, in this case, a defense. I think Glenn's defensive season can kind of be cut into two. The end-of-season statistics can be a little bit anomalous, if you ask me here. Through 8 weeks last year in 2022, the Lions had given up at least 24 points or more in every game. Of course, they were 1-6 at that juncture. Gave up 48 to the Seahawks. Gave up 38, I think, to the Eagles in Week 1. Suddenly, the next week, Week 8, they beat Green Bay. And things kind of shifted there. They beat Green Bay 15-9. By the way, they picked off Aaron Rodgers 3 times that week. Statistically, that's the turning point for this defense. They drafted some really good players, brought in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. But that final 10-game stretch of last year, Aaron Glenn's defense was drastically different from that 1-6 start. Look, they gave up 19.7 points per game in the last 10 games of the year last year. It's not like all of those games were against bad teams. They beat the Packers twice. They did lose to the Bills on Thanksgiving Day, but it was 28-25. It's a very competitive game. That number, 19.7 points per game in the last 10 games, that would have been 7th in the NFL for the entire season in 2022 if it had counted. So you have to say there was a statistical break This year, 2023, they're just even better, through 6 games at least. They're allowing 18.8 points per game, including only 6 down in Tampa Bay on the road last week. The Lions' defense is just extremely tough. That goes without saying. Fast, very active. They have active hands. I was talking on a podcast Friday morning. They just have very active hands. They get hands on the football a lot. Hands on receivers, hands on, they're just excellent with their hands. You can tell their daily drills, their EDDs are just fantastic. Brian Branch has added an element of shutdown play as a nickel safety. And what can you say about Aidan Hutchinson? He's having a great year, 4.5. If you just look at sacks, because some people do, he's having 4.5 sacks through 6 games. So prorate that out to a 17-game season if you want. But look, Aidan Hutchinson's a dude who gets held at least twice a game, sometimes 3 times a game, and doesn't get the call. I'm talking about non-calls. I'm not talking about the ones that are called. It's obvious. I mean, it started in week 1 against the Chiefs. It's very unusual dynamic, if you ask me. They're excellent against the run. The Lions are the best run defense in the NFL in terms of yards allowed per game. They're at 64, almost 65 yards per game allowed. The Browns are second. They've played 1 less game, the Browns, but they're second in terms of yards per game, 65.8. Last week, the Lions just allowed 46 rushing yards on 19 carries to the Bucs down in Tampa Bay. This has been an incredible start to the season for Aaron Glenn's group. I want to read out to you some stats from the last 4 games. Here's the teams they played: the Bucs, Panthers, Green Bay, and the Falcons. That's the reverse order of the last 4 teams they've played. I'm going to read you the yards per play, again, by the opposing team's offenses, the Bucs, Panthers, Green Bay, and Falcons offenses. I'm going to read you the yards per play, and you tell me which team is which. I'm going to mix them up. 4.3, 4.6, 2.8, and 5.3. Would you believe that the 5.3 yards per play was by the Panthers in a game that was pretty much over in the first half? It was 28-7 after a second quarter blitz by the Lions, offense and defense. They forced 3 turnovers, up 28-7 at home, really avenged that loss to the Panthers last year. That's the team that has the largest yards per play. Well, the Lions are playing a different defense when they're up 28-7 or when they're up 35-10. I think it was 35-10 in the second half at some point in the fourth quarter, Falcons, they held them to 2.8 yards per play. Green Bay, 4.3. Bucs last week, 4.6. They're just playing fantastic defense. Other side of the coin of this is Todd Monken. Clearly, he's a guy who started coaching long before Aaron Glenn did, 89. After playing quarterback in college, he's from Illinois originally, Knox College, I think. He's coached wide receivers, quarterbacks, offensive coordinator, been a passing game coordinator, all through the Division I level. Eventually makes his way up to the NFL 8 years ago with the Bucs. Offensive coordinator for a year with Tampa Bay, maybe 2. 1 year offensive coordinator with Cleveland, 2019. And then Georgia for the last 3 years. He landed in Baltimore in mid-February as offensive coordinator to replace Greg Roman. About 2 months later, the Ravens signed OBJ. What kind of makes sense? OBJ had played for Todd Monken in 2019 with the Browns. There was a relationship there. There's almost like this domino effect because 2 weeks after OBJ signs, people can speculate all they want there. I'm fine with whatever someone's perspective is. Lamar signs his then record deal for $52 million a year. But as much as all that sounds like a fairy tale, the first season so far has been inconsistent. It just has. Are the Ravens scoring points enough such that they can win games? Yeah, of course. 22 points per game, 22.2 or 22.4 points per game. It's good enough to win when your defense is only allowing 15 points per game, which, as we established in the third preview, is 4th in the league right now. Let's get to some of the Ravens offense film, and we'll try to put some markers, some indicators as to what you may see against a really talented, tough, and well-coached Lions defense. So far this year, Lamar, Todd Monken, Coach Harbaugh, they've openly admitted all the mistakes that are out there, on film. Nonetheless, the Ravens had a 2-0 start to the season, and offensively, 52 points scored against the Texans, who clearly are a vastly improved team. I don't know why people thought that they weren't going to be with all the talent they brought in, drafted, and the improvements in coaching staff. And then against the Bengals in week 2 on the road. Those 2 wins had us, as Ravens fans, thinking this was going to be like a smooth transition. That we're going to move away from the Greg Roman offense, predicated on the pistol read option and some, a lot of other concepts, to a more 11 personnel focused, passing balanced offense with Todd Monken. And we thought that, I guess maybe some of us thought it was going to be smooth, but Todd Monken was always honest, I think, always up front, even in training camp and preseason, saying that, this is a work in progress and we've got a long way to go. And that proved to be true, because the last 4 weeks, the Ravens have, after that 2-0 start, the Ravens have alternated wins and losses, and really just squandered what was a great chance to start at least 5-1 in terms of how we've played defensively and the opportunities that have been out there for the offense, some of which we have, just not taken advantage of. Lamar was at times brilliant in clutch situations. So far, really, through 6 weeks, some of his best drives, some of his best moments have been when we've needed to get first downs, when we've needed to either close out games or convert a third down. This Bengals win, I think, is fantastic in week 2. It gets better and better as the season goes on, particularly given that the Ravens went on the road for 3 consecutive division games. Bengals, Browns, and then Steelers, not in consecutive weeks. This is a 3rd and 3 against the Bengals. If you're a Lions fan, you're watching this long, first of all, thank you. But second of all, this is the decision. This will illustrate the decision that a defensive coordinator has to make in what people call high leverage downs. What some teams do is they bring 5 or 6 players and basically fill all the gaps. And the reason is because they don't want Lamar to do what he does here. Lou Anarumo, fantastic defense coordinator for the Bengals. I think he's one of the best in the league, one of the best in the world. However, on this situation, he did a 3-man rush with a spy that was pointless, and then double-teamed Mark Andrews. Okay, he took away Andrews, and you want to play man on all these other guys, Bateman, Flowers, I think OBJ up there, fine. Man on the running back up to the top side, it's Gus. 3-man rush and a spy doesn't mean anything to Lamar. A 4-man rush doesn't mean anything. If he's got the ability to move his feet at all, a 4-man rush or a 3-man rush, there's no difference. And Mike Tomlin hit the nail on the head a couple of weeks ago when he said, there's no point in spying Lamar Jackson. You might as well just +1 add on that guy as a rusher. So the tactical decision that Aaron Glenn will have to make will be, how often is he going to bring 4, 5, 6 people and try to get the ball out of Lamar's hands quick so he can't do the things you're seeing on screen right there. Ravens were able to close out that win over the Bengals with some clutch plays like the one I just showed you by Lamar, and then this 3rd down conversion, Gus, for 6 yards. So we think that everything is great offensively for us, and the next week at home against the Colts, we were sadly mistaken. We blew this game, basically. We had a 19-6 lead after a safety with 2 minutes left. And then 2 very confusing play calls here result in a 3-and-out after we get the ball back. There's like 2 minutes and 3 seconds left. Ravens fans know about this, Lions may not. We field a punt by Zay Flowers. We fair catch it with 2:03 left. If we catch it and return it, we're now past the 2-minute warning. We gave the Colts an opportunity to have an additional timeout in the 2-minute warning. However that happened, people can debate it as if they want. But this call here and the very next one are extremely perplexing to me. This is a 2nd and 9. And we're in Jumbo 22 personnel. So Jumbo 22 means there's 2 running backs, and you can see them in the backfield. There's 2 tight ends. The only difference is one of them is Daniel Falele, a 6th offensive lineman. So it's not typical 22. I referred to this as not an NFL call on 2nd and 9 in the 4th quarter when you have the lead. That's not a call that call sticks out to me still as one that we haven't repeated. And then this one on the ensuing 3rd and 9. I didn't like this call either. Sweep to Zay Flowers. And I just don't like the call. I don't feel like it gives us an opportunity to actually get the first down and potentially close out the game. Is there a face mask there? Certainly, whatever. Colts needed a 53-yard field goal to tie it and send it to overtime, and they got it. Well, to tie the score at 19-all, I should say. Ravens got the ball back with a minute left, and Lamar takes a terrible sack and then makes this brilliant throw to Nelson Aguilar on a 3rd and 20. This is the final minute of overtime. What's my point? Lamar at times this season has needed to make throws, needed to make plays with his feet, and he's done them in almost every case. This is a 3rd and 20, gives us an opportunity at the Colts 43. Game tied at 19 to potentially win the game. If you're a Lions fan, you've seen this situation before. 2021, the Ravens go up there to Detroit and win a game that they really didn't deserve to win. I think the Lions defense completely outplayed the Ravens generally in that game. even though the Ravens, did lead 16-7 going into the fourth quarter. I didn't think the Ravens deserved to win that game, and this Colts game to me reminded me of it. In this case, the 61-yard field goal after that great throw by Lamar, 61-yard field goal by Tucker falls short in regulation, forced to go to overtime. Yeah, we all complain about the potential DPI to Flowers here in overtime. Was it interference? Probably. Was it called? Nope. And that's the way the game is sometimes. We shouldn't have left it up to the referee's hands. Just like fighters, MMA guys, boxing guys don't leave it in the ref's hands. And you won't be penalized. Look at the Browns game the next week. Lamar was extremely efficient. If you're a Lions fan and you're looking for tendencies with this Ravens team, or you're looking for patterns, Lamar's played brilliant for most of the year. He's thrown too many interceptions for my liking. Fumbled the ball some on sacks. But this game against the Browns, against one of the best defenses in the league, it's a wonderful response to that home loss. Lamar, I think, goes 15 for 19 passing in the game. This is a brilliant 3rd and 6, basically pick concept by Nelson Aguilar down bottom. And almost said Gus Edwards. Melvin Gordon is singled up on JOK, the inside linebacker for the Browns. Beats him. Nice throw by Lamar. Real great touch on the wheel. JOK really, never had any sense of where the ball was. 15 of 19 passing. Ravens offense really got conservative in the second half, and fans were concerned because of how dominant we were at times in the first half, and there's no problem with that. Great throw to Andrews in the back of the end zone. And if you're a Lions fan and you're watching this and your perspective is, we just need to make Lamar throw the ball, I got bad news for you. He's done a good job of that so far this year generally. TODD MONKEN actually is a passing game guy. So that part of the offense is drastically different from the last couple of seasons for the Ravens. And Lamar has been really good at getting the ball out quick, making quick reads, and getting the ball to multiple guys. This is a true spread offense, okay? That's the overall point that I should make here. It's a true spread offense. Multiple guys are touching the football. It's not nearly as Lamar-centric as the offense was under the pistol option stuff that Greg Roman did. We go to the Steelers the next week, week 5, and offensively really dominated them. I think 255 yards of offense in the first half, but only a 10-3 lead to show for it. And that's been one of the things that's plagued the Ravens in 2022 when TODD MONKEN wasn't here, when he was winning the national championship at Georgia, was red zone offense and opportunities we didn't take advantage of. We left out there on the field. I don't think the Ravens can get away with that against this Lions team. 5 red zone trips, 4 field goals, and 1 touchdown. You're not going to be able to get separation or outscore a Lions team that's going to put points and yards on the board. They're just too good with Ben Johnson, Jared Goff, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, all the weapons that they have, even though David Montgomery's out for this week. The red zone inefficiency has plagued the Ravens and is the primary reason, for the most part, along with these drop passes in Pittsburgh, obviously, that why the Ravens are 4-2. And instead of being 5-1 or potentially 6-0. And then turnovers. They've turned the ball over. They've fumbled the ball. I think the Ravens have 10 turnovers on the season. 10 times where we've either had interceptions or fumbles on the season. Let me correct myself. And then we've mismanaged 4th down situations constantly. This is a 3rd and 10, late second quarter, regardless of what we think on the next ensuing play here. The reason for it, it happened. It happened the way it did. Tyler Linderbaum's fault? I don't think so, but who cares at this point? John Harbaugh's fault? Whatever. We made a decision, and we're putting players in situations that they're not responding to. So why do we keep doing those things? If the Ravens leave points on the board, and what I mean is, if the Ravens don't get points in all of these situations against this Lions team, you will not win. This is the very next play, last play of the half, next last play of the half. The Ravens are trying to fake a snap. They switch to running back to the other side. Apparently, the Ravens center thinks that someone jumps off sides. They did not, so we snapped the ball on a 4th and 2 with inside of 10 seconds left in the half, or inside of 15 seconds left in the half. Lamar escapes from T.J. Watt, throws an incomplete pass because no one was trying to run a route. Horribly mismanaged situation. The Ravens ends up losing this football game for that reason and others, like this interception that you see. The 4th down decisions, the decisions in the red zone have really been confusing and not left Ravens fans in a great mood after some of these losses. Last week, the offense goes to London, and we get up 18-3 at the half. Tucker's field goal, very fortunate. Ravens got a muffed punt by the Titans. Last play of the half, kicked a field goal to go up 18-10. But there's a series of really high-level plays in terms of execution. This screen to Nelson Aguilar, you can see, almost gets busted. This is, I think, a great throw to Zay Flowers into the boundary. If you're a Lions fan, you're wondering where some of these players will be, what you'll have to defend. The unique thing about the Ravens so far this year, and what will make Zay Flowers and Brian Branch potentially not match up that much, is that when the ball's on the hash, the nickel defender for most NFL teams is going to be here. That's where there's going to be two receivers. The Ravens do the same thing that Ben Johnson does. They put the tight end into the boundary. Generally, it's going to be Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews into the boundary. They're going to remove the nickel defender from that situation and let those guys operate as a 2-on-3 against the boundary side safety, boundary side inside linebacker, and boundary side corner. This happens to be a brilliant throw by Lamar over top of the curl flat player to Zay Flowers on the left side. This is a third down in the Titans game. This is when the Ravens offense is kind of rolling in the first half. This is OBJ for 32 yards. Came out, I think he had 2 catches that game, maybe 3, and drew another penalty. I don't think it was a defensive pass interference. I think it was his first fight with Jeffrey Simmons. Apparently the second one happened after the game. But Lamar was dealing here again. I think he only threw for 223 yards. The offense went really stagnant in the third quarter once again. And at a certain point, the Titans, down 18-3, are able to pull within 18-13. They've got the ball here, and the Ravens are very fortunate that one of our safeties, Geno Stone, tremendously underrated player, is able to get another clutch interception to get us the football back. He did, by the way, he did the same thing in Cincinnati in week 2 on a ball intended for T. Higgins. He intercepted it, prevented the Bengals from getting any points. Really is a game-changing play, if you ask me. He's done that twice already for a backup safety. It's a pretty unique story. After that, Lamar had three really clutch plays. This is a 3rd and 2, and this is going to be an option read play. In terms of the Lions' run defense, they're fantastic. But they have not faced a threat like this in terms of the option game at all. These are things that Lamar's done for 2 or 3 years in the NFL, and he can do with great efficiency. Sometimes Monken calls these plays into the boundary. This case, it's to the field. They're reading this defensive end, isolating him. Not only is Justice Hill go downhill to potentially get the football, but once he doesn't, he's going to veer upfield like a well-trained running back should and help try to go get the play side safety, and almost works out to where he's able to get there, give Lamar a block that would be able to spring him free. Lamar hasn't busted any big 50 or 60-yard touchdown runs this season, and people are saying he's less explosive. Well, he doesn't have those runs, so you can say that statistically. He's got a whole heck of a lot of plays like this. 3rd down, 3rd and 4, leading 18-13. We would love to go down and get a touchdown. We do not eventually, but this is the second 3rd down in a row that Lamar is able to convert. What's my point here? When you're dealing with Lamar Jackson on 3rd down, Aaron Glenn's going to have a decision to make. Does he want to let him do some of the things that we've shown you with his legs? Does he eschew that and go to a more conservative approach, 4-man rush, or maybe a 3-man rush with a spy? Or maybe just a 5-man rush and man-free? I think that's a dangerous choice to make. If you go 4-man rush, man-free, that's the wrong choice. That never has worked against Lamar Jackson. If you're going to go man-free, it's got to be a 5-man rush. You got to eschew the low-hole dropper in the middle of the field and commit to going after Lamar Jackson and getting the football out of his hands. Ravens got up 21-13 in that situation. Really confusing call, and I think this is what's been frustrating about the Ravens offense a lot this year is that we've got, the last 2 weeks at least, we've gotten down there inside the red zone, inside the 5, inside the 10, and we had been converting those things, and we're just not now. Which Ravens team shows up? The team that was elite the first 4 weeks of the season at converting inside the red zone, or the team we've seen the last 2 weeks, which was really disappointing? If that's the group that shows up offensively that can move the ball in the first half, can move the ball between the 20s, but gets down there and gets bogged down inside the 10, it's going to be a difficult time getting any separation from the Lions at all. Because like I said earlier, they're going to score. They're going to move the ball some no matter how good our defense is. Ben Johnson's going to have a plan. He's going to have things in place. And it'll be Todd Monken's job, if you ask me, to try to match that. There's really no other way to describe it other than the Ravens' offense this year has been inconsistent. It's been amazing early at times, particularly on our first drives. Occasionally brilliant in the first half. And it has included some clutch drives, late third quarter, fourth quarter. I've showed you a couple of them. That final possession versus the Bengals on the road, I thought was an incredible example of Monken and Lamar being prepared for the situation. The 10th and 11th drives last week against the Titans, I did a video on that this past week. They were also very revealing. Now, we only got field goals on those two possessions, but in multiple conversions by Lamar, either on passes or scrambles. And that's where I'm going to start to mix up this preview with some film and analysis on both sides of the ball. Before we get to that, statistically, you may think as a Ravens fan that this Lions defense, as a pass defense, is similar to the Titans and Colts, and here's why. They are somewhat comparable from a pass defensive standpoint. All three of them are giving up between 220 and 240 pass yards per game. Okay, check. There's some similarities there. The Colts have 18 sacks. We know their pass rush was legit. We dealt with that at home in week 3. The Lions and Titans both have 15 sacks each. I'm talking about their defense. I actually misspoke in the last preview I did and indicated that the Lions had given up 15 sacks offensively. The number that stuck in my head was the 15 sacks that they have on defense, led by Aidan Hutchinson's 4.5. Additionally, all three of those defenses have given up comparable pass yards so far this year, total. I think the Lions are at 1327, and I think the Titans are at 1462. The Titans are the Lions, Titans, and Colts are all between those two numbers. So between 1,300 and 1,450, roundabout, total passing yards allowed. The difference is the completion percentage and when the teams are passing. It's drastically different for me, even though, and again, this is one of those situations I think where statistics don't tell the full story. Yes, those three teams have comparable amount of sacks, given up comparable amount of pass yards, so you would rate them statistically overall maybe the same, but the Lions are winning a lot of games by 10, 14 points, especially recently. So teams are throwing more. Also, you have to look at multiple stats, not just one data point. The Lions are only giving up 5.7 yards per pass attempt. They're very multiple on defense. I talked about their effort, their activity level so far, and they're only allowing 60% completion percentage. Lamar, I think, is at 70% completion percentage. So there's a huge disconnect there between those numbers because the margin for error in the NFL is very small. The difference between 60 and 70% completion percentage is more than 10% in its impact on one single game. There will be some collision in multiple ways, and I'm trying to present to you one of the biggest one because the Lions are great against the run. I don't think the Ravens are going to come in here and run for 140, 150 yards. The Lions have been really consistent against the run. If you're going to beat them, if you're going to move the ball consistently, you're going to have to do a little bit of both, clearly. But I don't think the Ravens are just going to control the line of scrimmage against those D tackles and Aidan Hutchinson and the way Aaron Glenn utilizes three linebackers often. I really love what he's doing with Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes, occasionally playing them on the edge. I want to get to some film of the Lions' pass defense here first. And why did I quote stats to you for a couple minutes in the middle of a film study? Because I think to just look at stats and say someone's a top 10 offense, someone's a top 5 defense, someone's this, you've got to look at more than just one data point. And I really get bored with that kind of analysis and comments, and that's why I don't respond to them sometimes. So let's get into some of the film that I think shows or displays how multiple and versatile the Lions are in coverage, how active they are with their hands, and how often they get hands on the ball, deflect passes at the line of scrimmage, or make plays in coverage that a lot of teams just aren't playing all the time. So we're going to go through, I think, about 9 coverage plays. This is first week of the season, obviously, against the Chiefs. And you got Jerry Jacobs in coverage, man up at the top of the screen. Chiefs tried to isolate him to the boundary a lot. This coverage that they're playing, this manner of covering to the boundary is very similar to what the Ravens do on defense. They'll man on the number 1, the only receiver, the only stand-up to the boundary, and then the inside linebacker, Anzalone. He's the boundary side inside linebacker when the ball's on the hash in 11 personnel. If it's 12 personnel or 21 personnel, he'll line up based off of the tight end, or how they treat the second tight end in 12 personnel. But in any case, they're sticky in coverage. Jacobs is having a hell of a season. They should have Emmanuel Mosley there as a corner. He's not going to be able to play this year at all, suffering a second straight ACL injury. Pretty unfortunate, if you ask me. The Ravens know what it's like to deal with injuries, particularly to our DB core this year. So again, against the Chiefs, Number one receiver to the boundary. Same tight end's going to run a drag. Jacobs in coverage. Man, just they do a nice job of blending coverages together to the field in terms of playing zone to the field. And then you can see Anzalone's on man on the back. Jacobs is on man. It's quite typical for the backside of trips or bunch sets. Backside of 3x1 sets, you're normally going to get man to the boundary. That's just the way things work out. Trying to cover the whole side of the field. Brilliant stuff in terms of hustle, getting hands on the ball by Anzalone here. And then I think Jacobs is the beneficiary against the Packers 3 weeks later. Play action by Love. Anzalone is getting into the window, ball intended by Love for Christian Watson. And that's Tracy Walker. Tracy Walker's a hitter. If you're a Ravens fan and you haven't heard of this guy or don't know much about him, he's a hitter. He lays shots on people and makes plays on the ball as well. Before they had this infusion of talent, Tracy Walker was a starting safety for them, but now they got Kirby Joseph, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, if and when he's healthy. Hopefully he's able to come back this year from a torn pec, and then Brian Branch. But you can see the deflection by Anzalone, huge hit by Walker, and the interception by Jerry Jacobs occurring almost simultaneously. He's got 3 interceptions. I think he also has 3 or 4 defensive pass interference calls, so don't get me wrong. There's times where people have been able to get things done against him, particularly DK Metcalf at home. During the Lions loss, I think, in week 2. Brian Branch, top side. He'll be returning, apparently full practice participant Thursday. Brilliant football player. Just great against the run, great against the pass. Don't get me wrong, Will Harris is a good football player too, but Brian Branch is a different thing, and his ability to look instinctive while just making reads. It's not instinct. He's making a read. He's inside leverage of 2 to the boundary, and he's just looking for an out route. Let me break on it now. Look for the football. That's simple. Brian Branch has done that drill probably 2,000 times while at the University of Alabama. Against Carolina, like I said, they blitzed them. Got up 28-7 at one point in the first half. Huge hit on Aidan Hutchinson after an interception, but this is an amazing play. This guy's not to be messed with too often. For Ravens fans, I would say we should treat him in some ways like TJ Watt. Like, the dude is just incredibly violent and active with his hands. He reminds me of a combat sports fighter that just gets multiple strikes on you in a matter of 2 or 3 seconds. And in this case, that strike on the tight end, it was a tight end screen, ends up resulting in an interception. They're an extremely active, high-effort defense. It's the NFL, right? Everyone should be giving high effort. Their effort pops out on film, if you ask me. I would compare them from that standpoint to what we saw from the Browns prior to playing them up in Cleveland this year. I wonder about the boundary side coverage, what the Lions are going to do early in the game to try to, I don't want to say confuse Lamar and TODD Monken, but to try to put stop signs up for them, like, oh, you're not going to be able to operate over here as much as you think. So when I say to the boundary, the ball is on the left hash, and you got Jacobs to the boundary. I think this is Kirby Joseph, really talented guy. He's got, I think, 3 interceptions of Aaron Rodgers on his docket, and a 4th one that didn't count last year, I think, from the Week 16 game. Out motion by the tight end. It's going to be cover 2. So he's going to kind of like sink to the flats. Safety gets off. Bryce Young thinks he's got this kind of like post-corner route to the receiver because they've inverted the tight end and the receiver with the little out motion. Jacobs falls off brilliantly. Great. He's got great hands. Ball gets near him, he makes the catch generally. I root for a guy like him, man. He's wasn't slated to be the starter because of Mosley, and then Cam Sutton, who really, it doesn't seem like people throw at Cam Sutton a whole lot so far this year. I felt like last week the Bucs kind of ignored him. Now, there was 2 times where guys were open to his side, ball just not delivered. This is not a situation where you can say as a Ravens fan, oh, the Lions are great at stopping the run, so we're going to throw the ball all over them. They're really well trained and disciplined in coverage, and everyone, the inside linebackers too. I did a video on Alex Anzalone last week. I mean, Lions fans, I'm sure, watched it. Ravens fans probably didn't, but like, the dude can play a boundary side inside linebacker. He covers extremely well. This play is almost a pick 6. Last week against the Bucs, it's a 2nd and 3. The very next play, and I'll show you that one in a minute. The very next play, Jerry Jacobs almost gets an interception. By the way, watch how these guys pass off these routes here. I think you get dual post routes across the field. And Sutton and Jacobs are going to pass them off to each other. In this case, I think it's Joseph takes over Joseph takes over the route from Jacobs. Sutton releases his man, which is Godwin, across the field. And Jacobs takes him over. They're just very smooth. They're very well trained, very disciplined. The Ravens and Todd Monken are going to have problems to figure out on every play. What coverage is it? How do we attack it? How do we read it? This is another amazing play, if you ask me, by Jerry Jacobs up to the top side, the field side. So you can see him and Cam Sutton are right and left corners generally. There was some times against the Seahawks later in the game where I felt like the Lions moved Jacobs away from DK Metcalf because it was just a really bad matchup for him in terms of the size. DK Metcalf's a bad matchup for everybody. But look at Jacobs. Look at how he orients himself here for this route. Jumping to the inside. This is a 3rd and 3. The very next play after Anzalone's tip pass, it almost was intercepted. Look at it's almost like he knows the route. I mean, he's not worried. Yeah, is he in body position where he could turn and go with a vertical? It's 3rd and 3, though, man. I think there's some real serious scouting done here by the Lions players, coaches. Jacobs is a part of that. These are just some illustrations of how active I think they are on defense, how well trained, and how much of a challenge it's going to be to execute. They're going to contest everything. So you should expect that you will see contested catches or opportunities for contested catches against this Lions team. It'll be Todd Monken's job to try to game plan and scheme out some positive matchups for the Ravens. To the boundary is the first place I'm looking during the game to see. Maybe the plays aren't even run to the boundary initially, but what is Aaron Glenn and the Lions defense doing? Alignment-wise, the nickel's going to be to the field. That's where the nickel goes. All right. Occasionally you get the nickel into the boundary if it's a bunch formation over there or something like that. So that's the first thing I'm looking for is what's the boundary side alignment look like by the Lions? And then who is going to match up with Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews over there? Anzalone's going to be involved. Jerry Jacobs or Sutton, depending on whether it's ball on the right hash, ball on the left hash, and then the boundary side safety as well. To close this out, I'm going to show you guys at least 2 concepts that the Ravens kind of rely on or utilize multiple times a game to kind of thwart defenses and get back into that conversation of what's Aaron Glenn going to choose to do. I'm sure he's going to be multiple. He's not going to come out there and play sticks blitz 0 17 times or however many like the Dolphins did in 2021 in that Thursday Night Football game. He's not going to come out there and just sit, rush 4, and play cover 2 zone all game long. It's going to be multiple. It's going to be at a moment in time of his choosing that he plays particular coverages. Todd Monken's job is to try to have answers for all of those coverages. Let me give you one answer the Ravens utilize under Todd Monken that they didn't utilize much with Greg Roman to combat 5-man rush. So I think all of these iterations is going to show you a 5-man rush. And we're talking about a slot fade, not a new concept, but as we get into the play here, you'll see what I'm talking about. Man here, man with the safety there. So it's 11 personnel. So the Lions would be in their nickel defense. And Brian Branch will be somewhere over here to the field, either against Mark Andrews or against the slot receiver with a different safety on Andrews. And what we're talking about, the choices is not bringing a 4-man rush when you're playing man-free. So the area of the field that you're not covering or that you're not aligning someone up to cover is the low hole in the middle of the field, meaning a +1 defender. I'm not talking about this guy guarding Andrews. I'm talking about an additional linebacker or someone, safety, robbing down over some route like this one to help out in the middle of the field. You're eschewing that and utilizing that guy as a +1 rusher, a 5th-1 rusher. Why? Because of the unique threat that Lamar Jackson is running the ball. So when teams do that, this is the Ravens' answer. The slot fade out of a 5-man rush and you're playing man-free. I call it the same defense. It's man-free coverage. You just don't have a low hole dropper. It's going to be the same iteration. Flowers on a slot fade. I think it's incomplete, slightly overthrown. Same week against the Bengals. There's probably, I'd say, 8 or 9 iterations of this concept, the slot fade, from this season already. I don't think I could have found 8 or 9 all season last year for the Ravens. Everybody uses a slot fade. Some people say it's a ubiquitous threat that'll defeat any coverage. I'm not sure I agree with that. But slot fade is definitely one where you can develop a throw that's outside to the sideline. And if you're getting man, it's a relatively safe throw in that it's either a catch, potentially a DPI, or an incompletion. Here's an example against zone. It's going to be Zay Flowers from the top side of the field, kind of like I would say a blown coverage from an alignment standpoint. Maybe they're playing the coverage they want to, they being the Texans, But I think the alignment of these guys, inside shade, and then just not wide enough by Petre to go over here and get this thing. This is another illustration, too, of Lamar, looking to one side. In this case, I think he's looking at Likely in the middle of the field, coming back to Flowers, seeing him immediately, zipping it up there up top for, I think, a 29-yard gain. Conceptually similar route to the two that I showed you against the Bengals. Really, I would just call it smash, but whatever. Inside receiver, slot receiver, running something vertical, veering it off to the outside. Post-corner route, depending on how old you are, you may call it something different. Against the Steelers, Andrew's going to motion down. Aguilar, slot fade. This is the one that he catches and then fumbles on the sideline when he gets hit. And you got man free. In this case, the Steelers are putting an inside linebacker on Andrews, safety on Aguilar, and then two outside corners there with the middle of the field free safety. The remaining inside linebacker is going to be on the back. Talking about this guy right here. He's the +2 rusher, really, because Gus hasn't released yet. You can see the 5 rushers that the Steelers are bringing. 3. That's Minkah Fitzpatrick's helmet right in there. 4. And then 5. I'll run it back again so you can see it. Beautiful throw by Lamar outside. This is what you're going to get if Aaron Glenn decides to bring the 5-man rush. It doesn't mean that Lamar's going to complete it all the time. This is just one of the answers that TODD MONKEN has, and I suspect Lamar has the ability to check to this if he thinks he sees man coverage. Now, in this instance, I'm not sure that he checked the routes. I think he may have checked something with the protection because he saw Minkah Fitzpatrick in the box potentially as that 5th blitzer, which he was. So hopefully I said all that in a way that makes sense. That's one of the Ravens' answers if Aaron Glenn is going to go to a 5-man rush often, is that they'll have this stuff prepared and ready, and Lamar could change the protection and or check to the play, which he's done a brilliant job of lately, checking the plays at the line of scrimmage, and you can see Lamar can get that thing out there even when there's a defensive lineman in his face. Let's get to another concept that the Ravens are going to use to possibly try to exploit some things the Lions do, the option run game. All right, so we've established that the Lions are excellent at stopping the run. I haven't necessarily shown film of it. I don't think I need to. You can look the numbers up for yourself. 388 rushing yards allowed through 6 games. I guess the other side of that coin is they've been in the lead a lot, so teams have skewed the run game in favor of the pass. Okay, fine. But in any case, if they were running the ball successfully, maybe the other teams wouldn't be behind as much. I offer to you that for the Ravens to get, I don't even want to say a lot done, a medium amount of success in the run game, they may have to use Lamar on some option concepts, or at least make it look like option. The benefit of transitioning from the Greg Roman offense to TODD MONKEN's offense, even though we have been extremely inconsistent at times, despite being 4-2, is that Lamar has a ton of experience in all the various option reads. The typical option read where the running back is to the right or the left of the quarterback, either A gun or B gun, or in the pistol, which Greg Roman utilized a lot, and I'll show you, I think, one iteration of that. I will digress here in a moment for Lions fans into a explanation of a dual read-ons option concept that Ravens fans should probably have some really high-level knowledge of after watching content creators like myself and others. But this is an example of what looks like an option play that is actually not. Lamar's not reading anything on this particular play. This is just a called QB counter. You do have the element, though, of running this thing without Patrick Ricard being the lead blocker. If you're a Lions fan and you watched the game in 2021, you know that Patrick Ricard is a fullback / tight end for us. In this case, the Ravens are actually have Pat Ricard used as a decoy, Gus Edwards leading out for Zay Flowers in what looks like it could be sweep. Well, we run sweep to Zay Flowers, and sometimes a little bit too often. I'd like to see us run it with Duvernay. But typically when we would run things like this, you would have Patrick Ricard at the point of attack, which is the top side of the screen for us, the left side of the Ravens offense. In this case, they've eschewed that, put him down to the boundary as kind of like a decoy. I think TODD MONKEN is playing off of the Ricard tendency at times. The job of Monken is to not play off of it too much. This is an example of a pistol read option play into the boundary behind Ricard. Is twin slot. Again, you see some similarity between this play and the last play, motioning Flowers to the boundary. Lamar is isolated. We've isolated that boundary side D end, who I think he was the read man 3 times in that game last week. So this is an element of the run game that the Ravens can go to kind of add on to the rushing stats at the end of the game, another 30, 40, 50 yards, because Lamar has the ability to do this. That's an asset. Clearly, we don't want him to take an inordinate amount of hits. But you can see the isolation that's occurred. Duve is going to get the safety. Flowers, who went in motion, going to get the boundary side corner right there. Lamar is reading that DN correctly. He steps down to Edwards. Chunk gain on a 2nd and 6 off the right side to the boundary. Now, let me explain one thing to you guys about what's called a dual read. So you can see that Lamar's face mask, number one, is it's not really parallel to the yard lines here. It's a little bit canted in this direction. That's intentional. He's not looking directly at this defensive end with his face mask. He's taught to do it this way so that he has the running back in his peripheral vision and he has the ability to see the defensive end and read him. In this case, it's the correct read. Keeps it to the boundary. Big gain. I think there's a penalty in this one on Ricard for a hold. This is last year, 2022. Let me try to explain the dual read to you. And the two examples I'm going to use, this one and the next play from 2022, aren't necessarily the best ones. Normally, you would have a fullback's feet right here. And as Lamar opens up to the DN, the fullback would be reading that same defensive end that Lamar is, hence the name dual read. In this case, likely is a little bit early because of the motion. So I don't think this is actually a read by Likely. I think this is just a read by Lamar. Sometimes it's a dual read. Sometimes it's a singular read. Hopefully I said that in a way that makes sense. I will get to one more from the pistol and then return to film last week against the Titans. This one I think Likely is a little bit late. I think this is supposed to be a dual read because of the location. It's kind of like split zone, essentially, what a lot of people would call split zone, except it's a slightly different a blocking scheme and what they're asking the fullback / tight end to do. So Lamar's going to be reading number 9, who suspects once he's not blocked, once he's left unblocked, he realizes, I'm the read man. Let me step down, and this is a clear keep read for Lamar, meaning don't give the ball to the tailback because number 9 is going to be able to step down and make the tackle. And by the way, if you're a Lions fan, that's the same guy that played against your team last week. Very good player. But number 9 is super intelligent like all of these guys are in the NFL. They understand the concept being run against them. So what's he do after forcing the keep read? He veers outside to go get Lamar because he knows he's going to keep it, and Lamar is so athletic he can juke him. It's a ridiculous level of athleticism and a somewhat scary usage of his skills on multiple levels. The ability to read the defense and make them wrong no matter what. Additionally, possibly opening up Lamar to more hits, although he's really adept at avoiding these hits. So let's talk about Likely and the dual read. I think he's a little bit late getting out of his stance here. What he's doing is if 9 steps down to take away the dive, which is what he does here, the typical fullback / tight end who would be lined up with his feet there, or Likely, whoever he is, what his response on a dual read would be is, okay, that's going to be a keep read. Lamar's reading the same thing I am. We practice this all the time. I'm going to loop around and go get the front side inside linebacker. I think Likely slightly late getting out of his stance here. And then by the time he gets to number 9, 9 is already kind of moving upfield, so Likely goes underneath of him. So if this was a dual read in practice, one of them was wrong. It would be Likely. That is a correct read by Lamar to keep it, even though he ends up going inside of number 9, who understood he was being read. Now, what's the benefit to what Monken is doing this year? He's running the option less. He's making it less reliable for you as a defender and a defensive coordinator to know that it might be coming, to know that that play might be coming. One more look at this from the All-22, and then the end zone. I actually talked about this play once already. This is called a veer release. This is called an arc release by Aguilar. He's going to loop outside to go get the nickel, which in this case is Roger McCreary. And Hill's going to go downhill, not get the football, and then veer on the backside of the wall that's built by the offensive lineman to go get the play side safety. Lamar keeps it, which is the correct read off this D end. Huge gain up the middle. Let's give you the end zone angle of that play. Behind the offense. The nickel defender is just coming into your screen right here. That's McCreary. It's 11 personnel, so Aguilar is on the field. This is the defensive end 96 who's being isolated, who's being read. This is a go-to call on third down for Monken at times. There's got to be more times, I think, where we just give it to the back. But you can see that he's trying to half-man this. The defensive end's trying to half-man this. He's trying to be in between the two reads. So if Lamar gives it, he can fold inside. If Lamar keeps it, then he can run parallel to the line of scrimmage or with his heels down the line of scrimmage and help string it out. In this case, he steps down. You're wrong no matter what you do if you're isolated like this by the offensive alignment, by the offensive coordinator. If the Ravens are not successful running the ball consistently, which I don't think they will be, I don't think they're going to run the ball for 140 yards without Lamar Jackson adding on 40, 50, or even 60 of those yards. One more iteration of it from 11 personnel. This should be a give read. Someone in the comment section talked about they don't think that Lamar reads this consistently. It's hilarious. I know 12-year-old kids who read 3 different versions of the option at 90% efficiency. I mean, I don't know what to tell somebody. If they think that the game moves too fast and the quarterback can't read it, why are so many teams doing it? And why are defensive ends so consistently wrong? This should be a give read. Lamar is reading this D end up here, who's stepping down. It's a QB counter call. He misreads it, and he's so athletic that he's able to go back against the blocking scheme's grain. You'll get the end zone angle, so you'll confirm what I'm seeing. Make 2 or 3 or however many guys miss and still gain 7 yards. That ability to get 7 yards on what should be, well, it should be a give to Zay Flowers. This is the reman here, by the way. 58 Landry, incredibly underrated football player for the Titans. You can see what he's done. He stepped down. If Lamar is in fact reading him, I think there's some times where he's reading the front side inside linebacker. But if he is in fact reading him, which I think he is, this should be a give to Zay Flowers behind Gus Edwards out in space. Andrews is going to go get somebody, probably Shahir, and we're in business getting Zay Flowers out on the edge. As it is, Lamar keeps it. Still gains 7 yards against a tough and nasty group of Titans defenders. Really shocking sometimes what he's able to do. The Ravens have somehow manipulated the Titans into putting the nickel defender to the boundary, which is what kind of makes this read a little disappointing for me. You can see that it's a counter read. Simpson and Stanley are getting out there. Simpson a little slow, if you ask me. Supposed to get out there and kick, and Stanley's supposed to get out there and wrap. The blocking scheme is for Lamar. We call it inverted veer sometimes. You call it QB counter read, QB bash if you want. We call it inverted veer. This is actually kind of like backwards bash. But in any case, that's some examples of the option plays that Lamar and Monken have in their pocket to use to hopefully churn out another 30, 40, 50 yards, 55 yards against this Lions defense that's just so damn good against the run. You can't expect that typical run concepts are going to be able to control the ball and generate multiple first downs against them. All right, the last element that would be remiss if I don't mention, I'd be remiss if I don't mention multiple aspects here. Zay Flowers, Brian Branch, the Ravens run game. I could show more examples, but we've gone on long enough with this preview. If you guys don't like this style preview that's elongated, don't worry. I can't reproduce this every week. This is a very unique situation for me in that I've watched a ton of Lions and Ravens film to the exclusion of other teams. Typically, I would do rookie film study videos every week. Because I've chosen to do Lions content this year and Ravens content, I knew they were playing in Week 7, so it was a unique opportunity. I have been unable to produce other content. As a result, like this is really what I have. So if you don't like this, don't worry. I won't be able to do this every week because the Ravens and Lions won't play again unless they meet in the Super Bowl, which would be amazing. And that's the kind of effort I tried to give you guys this week. So the last element that I have to cover is Aidan Hutchinson. It was fun to watch him last year. Some people would say evolve, grow, improve. Yeah, I don't know. Some of those things may be applicable, but I think he's just a damn good football player. And the initial evaluation of him was just flawed in the NFL. He's never going to be a 14-sack guy. He's never going to be this. Like, what is this rush that 30, 40, and 50-year-old dudes like myself have to apply to 22, 23, 24-year-old young men that are living out their professional dream already? I don't understand this rush to judge those people. 22, 23-year-old people improve and don't make the same decisions as they grow older. But in any case, I'll stop preaching and let's get to the film on Aidan Hutchinson. 4.5 sacks this year out of the Lions' 15. I actually misspoke earlier. I was wrong twice. The Lions do have 15 sacks defensively. They have given up 10 on offense. A commenter from a previous video indicated they'd only given up 5, and I co-signed that. And then I went and double-checked it, and and that's not true. So they have given up 10, so it's a little bit more of a sack percentage than only giving up 5. But the effort level, man, the effort level, using his hands, the attacking mentality, commitment to get to the quarterback. I do compare him to TJ Watt because he's always putting his hands on people. He's going to put hands on people on every single play. I worry about the Lions utilizing him in this manner against the Ravens and attacking our guards, whether it's Kevin Zeitler or John Simpson, our left guard. That, to me, is our weaker side in terms of pass pro so far, the left guard, left tackle situation. Ronnie Stanley has not played to the level that we as Ravens fans expect of him and have generally gotten throughout his career. This is a ridiculous sack against the Falcons. I have to show this one. It's a spin to the inside. His spin moves are incredibly fast. He utilizes his elbow, tricep, forearm to clear the defender. I'll still act like I don't know his celebration, so you guys can comment on it. To clear the defender, brilliant technique, keeping his hips down. Look at the separation that he gets of the upper body, the breaking down of the posture of the tackle. And these are damn good offensive tackles he's going against. He'll be up against Ronnie Stanley and Morgan Moses at times. And Morgan Moses is a better matchup than you may think. So here's just a pressure against the Panthers. He's just committed to getting to the football. And the Lions being so sticky in coverage, yeah, they've only got 15 sacks. I mean, I say only. They've played 6 games. It's 2.5 sacks per game. The real fear for Ravens fans, I would say, is this. This should be considered somewhat of a nightmare scenario, is on passing situations, the Lions deciding to let Hutchinson go against John Simpson. And then maybe tag some other stunts along with it so guys can't help. And you can see it's a forced fumble late in the game against the Falcons. I think he got 2 sacks late in that game. At this point, I've watched so much film of the Ravens and Lions. Some of the games run together, but watch what the Lions are doing. Just a small, sneaky little thing. Hutchinson, they're trying to get him isolated on the left guard for the Falcons. So as a result, they'll take Kaminsky and run him into the center to occupy that center, basically telling the center, you're not going to be able to help because we're stunting inside. Now, the center was already stepping that way. They were trying to assist the left guard with the left tackle to no avail. Tremendously disruptive player. 4.5 sacks through 6 games. This is late in the half. Edge rush here. Sometimes with Hutchinson, it's the second, it's the third, it's the fourth effort. An amazing football player. It's unfortunate for the Lions that they've had so many injuries along the D end, depth on the other side, D end outside linebacker. Pascal, who returned this week. Romeo and Julian Okwara. One of my favorite players, James Houston IV, hasn't been able to play for a while. I thought he really looked good in the preseason. John Kaminsky is one of my favorite players to watch film of. It's pretty interesting. This is the last play of the half, I think, by the way. Check out what he's doing. Trying to get all his teammates to head to the locker room. But look, you guys let me know what you think of the preview overall. This is an attempt to compare and contrast the Ravens offense and Lions defense, how they've played so far this year, maybe give you information to project it out. I don't feel like I'm good at predictions, and so I don't do them because, A, I think it's kind of unfair to the players and coaches who make adjustments during the game. Like, we think we're smart enough to do a prediction. Well, maybe we will. I said 21-17, 2017, one way or the other. One turnover, one way or the other that creates a short field or even a defensive touchdown clearly changes that dynamic. So that 21-17 could swell to a 28-17, 28-14. I always look at it in terms of number of total possessions. You're normally looking at 10, 11, 12 possessions a game, somewhere around there. The Ravens' offense in most games has looked quite good on 3 possessions, at least 3. In some cases, it's been 4 or 5. If you go out there on 5 possessions and you generate a long drive, get points on 5 possessions, you got a pretty good chance to win this football game. Does that result in 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals? I think that's tough to do against this Lions defense. They're extremely well trained, as we've established throughout the preview here. You cannot turn the ball over and waste one of those possessions. And that's the thing that's really plagued this Ravens team throughout the course of the season, is we're basically turning the ball over 1 time per game, and in some cases more. The same thing bodes for the Lions offense. They had times in 2022 where they turned the ball over multiple times, and surprise, those are the weeks where they struggled. If the Ravens go out there and play turnover-free football and they can find the extra 30, 40, 50 yards from Lamar Jackson on the run, and are able to protect against guys like Aidan Hutchinson, of course they can go out there and they can win this football game. The Lions, the same thing applies. I think it's going to be an extremely well-played game, one that'll probably come down to the last 6-8 minutes of the fourth quarter. I appreciate you guys checking out my previews. This was super fun for me to do and tiring to try to get them out on Friday and Saturday for you guys to consume. So let me know what you think in the comment section. I really enjoyed trying to produce these guys for both fan bases. And if you think other Ravens fans or Lions fans would enjoy the style of preview that we put together here and the graphics that my friend, once again, was gracious enough to create, then please consider grabbing a link to this video and sharing it out on social media to help my content get more reach.